Hello everybody, my name is Zachary Ronaldo, better known online as Zach the Bold, and welcome to Bingo Night at Ray Bradbury's house. Then that's when I typically introduce myself. I'm messing it up already. Hello everybody, how we doing? It is a beautiful, beautiful day out here in Los Angeles. It's a little warm in my room, but you know, I had a mob come to my door last night with pitchforks and torches, and they were kicking down my door saying I talked about how hot it is in my room, which is illegal, as we know, in the state of California and Los Angeles, where I live. All right, let's get into today's context. Always messing with the windscreen, always messing with it. So I'm on vacation. This is sadly pre-recorded a week prior to this coming out, so a lot of the questions were ones that I missed throughout all of this time. I kind of go back and forth just so I can keep things kind of situated in a way that keeps things entertaining. But yeah, so send me new questions because I am running a little bit low on the question resource, but I guarantee you I can make one Instagram story and a bunch of people will comment. I'm out visiting Michigan with my girlfriend. We are, enjoying vacation. While we can. I'll be back probably sometime the week after, or this week where this airs. I will do super thanks and everything for that, so I am not missing them. It's going to be a bit of a shorter episode, and I already know from the questions that I've seen, we're going to be talking about my gaming philosophy. And we'll get more into that later on, so I'm sorry if it's a bit of a shorter episode, but alas, I'm on vacation right now, enjoying myself, decompressing from not burnout, just from, life and how things happen and whatnot. We have some great things. I can't go over what we talked about in the last episode because no one has commented yet because that video is not live as of right now. Otherwise, I would. So we're only doing questions today. Number one, watch Chaos Theory. Airs every Friday on Twitch. And it's also available on YouTube. I play a little kanku named Eamon O'Malley. He's super cool. No, that is it. We're gonna get started right away. These questions are longer. Bear with me, but we're gonna be doing deep dives in some of this stuff and some of my philosophies on game design and things like that. I want to say before we get started with this question, people who write in like this guy or person, and you still watch my stuff, and you have clearly listened up to episode 4 as of this airing. I have a lot of respect for you. Clearly, we do play the game very differently, and I hope to shed some light onto your game. I will say that I have played games like how you're going to say here. Not that I don't run them. I don't run games, sandbox games like this, but I do have a respect that people do like that, and that's totally, different ways for people to play the game and different things. Absolutely dump on your game all the time. It doesn't mean that I dislike you or your game as a person, right? I'm just saying I don't run my games that way, and I'm glad that you guys still have the respect for me to talk to me about it. Because I like your insights too, the health of this game is something I want to know about. I'm the one who has to, tell people in short form, quick 60-second videos on how this game is played to bring them into our game. You know what I mean? You've talked about how some cons involved the Sandbox format campaign, and it made me think about how I run my games. For my entire time as a DM, about 8 years I think, I've maintained a consistent homebrew setting where my players are free to pursue their own directions, which I think constitutes a sandbox in most people's minds. A fresh campaign by me will invariably be tied to a specific place in my world, but there has been several occasions where my party have elected to travel elsewhere for one reason or another. I'll make clear that this has never caused me issue, perhaps because I do not plan extensively for future narratives. My players and I began playing at roughly the same time, and this is simply the way we've collectively played the game, to the extent where I feel this is how my players have also run short campaigns on occasion. The party leaving these places hasn't occurred, primarily due to the briefness of these campaigns, which rarely exceeds 5 sessions. I apologize for the preamble, but my question is, how do you run your campaigns? How do your campaigns differ or compare? I'm sure you've already answered this in a few ways throughout the readings, but I do have a more specific question in mind as well. You've made it clear that your games are narrative heavy, and I understand this in principle. However, I'd like to know how much you judge your players to have agency throughout your narrative. For example, can players' characters' actions entirely change the trajectory of the campaign, or can they only distort the story arc, reaching the same key moments in variable ways? How much of a narrative are you willing to change as the campaign goes on? My understanding of a narrative railroad format of a game is one in which, regardless of player character action, narrative events come to pass with inevitability which potentially robs players of agency. As I say, my experience with these game formats is very limited, and I'm hoping you'll be able to provide some clarity on how you would avoid these problems in your own games, you with or without shouting like a maniac. I hope I've articulated my question clearly, and I would like to wish you every success. You offer perspective which I've seen very few people share, to some people's detriment to me sharing it, and I'm pleased to both disagree and agree with it in equal measure. Lastly, thank you for prompting me to consider how best to run my games. No other hobby has fostered my creative like D&D, and the community is richer for your voice. Keep up your fine work. The person who wrote in. All right, once again, thank you for that question. Totally great, totally respectful, and that's really great. And I'm hoping I can articulate in my own words, kind of spontaneously, on my philosophies when it comes to running a game of D&D, and especially one that I really, really want to run. I will tell you that when I'm a player right now, most of the games I play in are dungeon crawls. So I do get a good idea, and they're mostly modules, right? Because I go to something called Adventures League on Mondays, which is a D&D organized event. You have to play by, the rules. You have to play by the rules. There are some like banned books and things like that, but it's not like a standard like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon TCG or whatever. But it is like running, I mean, we played Tomb of Horrors, we've played Dragonlance, we have played a few other game systems. Sorry, not game systems. We played a few other different game settings and campaigns. And then I do play a Pathfinder game. Once again, is a dungeon crawl, super low role play. And these games are great, and they're super fun to pick up and put down. But the intrigue on my end to be like, I can't wait for the next session or like what's going to happen next or whatever really isn't there. It's more of just, how can I make my character, more overpowered? How can I run things better? To me, there isn't much involvement in that. And what I really find is that there is a lack of urgency and conflict in both of those games. I think when I look at my own games and what I run, I'm looking for something that is a storytelling medium where my friends do get to be the main characters of that story that I've made. Now, do I have a set ending? No. Do I know that there is inevitably going to be some kind of conflict that makes it so that, whether it be the smallest scale or the grandest scale, that's going to happen whether these heroes that these players are in this world happen or not? No. There is something that is going to happen, some kind of calamity or whatever, that if my players don't intervene, as it is with a lot of any story, right? If there isn't the main protagonist there to intervene, the bad guys win, right? So my gaming philosophy isn't that they have to follow my game to a T and how I've outlined things. And I know that the ending to my story is as malleable as my players want it to be, but I'm not going to wait until they get to the end to really make it. What I do is I make the world and what the problem is. And if my players didn't exist, the world would be worse off because of it. Which is crazy, because then you get, your players coming in and they ruin everything else, right? They ruin your plans and whatever. But that's why you have to have the structure of it, right? You are writing a story. And I've talked about this many other times on the pod where, we have this great game and it's a lot like film, right? It's a collaborative medium. There's many things going in on it. And the two for me is like, there is game design and then there is story design, right? And I think if you allow too much of the game design, your players aren't going to be as involved as they would be if there was stakes at all moments. I think about, I'm trying not to say too much because I am making a video on this, right? And I kind of wanted to say what my philosophies are. If there is a lich who is going to create some kind of ritual to destroy the world, for me, it's like if my players don't choose to, go and stop that, and instead they want to play like a life sim or whatever, to me, the ending is the same then, where everything will go wrong. I don't see how my players can make something when they're so lost in a world. I think if I'm able to create tension and conflict, just like any other story would actually have, my players are going to be more engaged. Now do I force them into things? It's more of an understanding between me and my players that they do want to be involved in this story. And they know that if they are going to go do something else, it's kind of to the detriment of their own fun. It's to the detriment of, them wanting to explore the story. Because it is the case where we don't play, like we play once every 2 weeks, once a week. And, we can't play every night. No, I don't think anyone really does. But they want to make sure that their time is valued and that I've put in that effort to make it so that there is some kind of conflict and ever running story going on. And I think that's the problem I have with sandboxes is that I'm constantly, whenever I'm in a sandbox, I as the player want to be involved in a story. I don't want, this isn't, I'd play Frostpunk if I want to play a resource simulator. There's other ways for me to be involved in stories or just multiplayer games or, filler or anything else like that. There's mediums for that, right? But to be involved in a story as a player that I can interact with my other friends where they're involved as a player, that is something totally unique to tabletop role-playing games. And with a sandbox, I just feel like that's so loose. The principle of what that is so hard to find. And that's why I think you have people who are yeah, it's a slow burn, but when the emotional moments hit, they hit, Okay, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to wait that long for me to be so invested in the story in the first place. Does that, I don't think, I don't play D&D, right, for the system. I love Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I play it to tell a story with my friends, and that's ideally, right? I still love playing 5th edition, and dungeon crawls are great and whatever, but if you really want me into a game, there has to be ever-evolving conflict, and I've realized the games where I have the best narrative control, right, is when my players are willing to go out of their way to accept, Zach is trying to tell a story, and I want to be involved in that. Now, if my story sucks, right, if my story sucks, that's a lose-lose, because then they're I will go doing whatever I want. Listen, I do let my players do whatever they want. I do. The thing is my players are so respectful and they're so understanding of what's going on in the game that they'll let me lead them to the path of story and narrative interest. And I have a lot of respect for my players that do that. Now, when I set up my game, I will give them, I think about it like Metro 2033 Exodus. In this game, it's and this is, I've made this opinion very public before. I like Dark Souls 1 and 3 more than Elden Ring because I don't like the open world aspect of Elden Ring. I feel like it wastes my time. It feels like I'm going around finding stuff. I like a tight, concise story. I just do. And I think it's because from my perspective, I want to be consuming as much as I can in a short amount of time, right? That doesn't mean I'm going to watch a movie on 2 times speed, but it's just after a certain point of me playing Elden Ring, I'm okay, well, I have to go and it's very, because it tells you where to go, right? You literally follow the bonfires, but sometimes, and that's why I hate grind in games. I don't know. I don't spend my time doing that. And it does reflect 100% in my D&D games. But you guys as an audience also have to realize too, one of my dreams is to run a game. And I don't want to run a game for an audience, right? I want to have an actual play that is well produced, well made, has a great story. And I don't want it to be an open world game because I don't think that's entertaining to watch. I think there should be pressure on your characters a lot at all times, whether that be in the immediate and in the long term. And that's just a storytelling tool, right? And I think that's the difference too between a lot of DMs and myself is concentrating on these tools and what is most fun for players. And in the most non-maniac reasons is just when I say I don't want to play your game, usually it's because I don't, because sometimes a lot of the DM sounds really bad, but it's because it's I do play in those games and I play in a lot and I play in a lot of those games and I do it a lot. People are asking me all the time, do I get burnt out from TTRPGs? And the answer is no. But the exhaustion I get from it is when I'm in too many of these like resource management dungeon crawl games. You put me in a good story. I love Chaos Theory. That's like the most narrative game. I have two games. I play Chaos Theory, and then I have my home game that I've been playing in for 3 years. And both of those have great combat, but it's like, it is story oriented, it is linear, there is somewhere to go with it, and there's a mutual respect from all of us that we can do whatever we want. But at the same time, we want to explore this story. And so that's why I have such a problem with people coming in and their power fantasies and their OCs, and they're coming in and they're just like, because that mutual agreement is not there. And that's where it's like, to me, I'm having a hard time figuring out, why are you playing this? And sometimes I've articulated where it's like, there are people who are quiet and they don't want to be in the game, but they love hanging out with their friends. And I think that's great and wonderful, right? But, to me, the magic is in the involvement and the understanding of creating something as this collaborative storytelling medium, right? And I think that's lost on Sandbox games. And, I think back to, to the late 70s, early 80s, when I was around. But, from what I've read, and from what I've seen, I think about, these games coming out of the war game era, right? And that these are like XCOM, taking this grand scale and really moving it down. And, hobbyists begun to come in, and more theatrical types and English writers and people in liberal arts college, and everything was separated, right? But the story did grow up to a point until actual plays came out. And I think people are coming in now with these preconceived notions of how D&D is supposed to be played. And to me, it's hard running into those players who, maybe they grew up with their dad playing very crunchy games, and, the narrative isn't as important, or even just like the filler of it. And I think that's where concise story comes in to build that bridge, honestly. I would love to play with this person. That is not invite. I'm sorry. People message me all the time, can I play a game with you? I'm sorry, guys. There would be just no time. I'm not going to run games online for money or anything like that. It's not what I want to do. I appreciate you messaging me, but I have other things to focus on. But, in a perfect world where time doesn't matter and I don't have to sleep, I would love to run a game with this person so I can show them, I think, this thing that people hate, which is railroading and linear storytelling and like the ability to take away a player's agency and everything. There is an element of that will build that bridge between the crunch players and the narrative players. And I think it's going to be like taking out that filler and replacing it with the tension and like not exactly the meat grind, but the reality, the harshness of the reality of the situation that emphasizes the conflict, that builds that bridge, right? And I think if given the opportunity, there's extremes on both ends. I don't think that I could convince, those extremes on both ends too, because I think about some people. And to me, I think it's there, right? And I'm trying to make it and understand it better. And overall, I think linear storytelling, the ability to tell a great story while giving your players and having the understanding that your players are characters inside the story and they're the heroes and the protagonists. That's where the magic comes from. That lightning in a bottle, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm hoping at some point, as things continue and as the medium, continues to evolve, that's where that bridge will be connected. So in my own games, I do have a story to tell, but it's not there to tell without my players being there to be the main characters. I have a world and I have a story, but that story cannot be told without the counsel of my friends, without the views and opinions of others, because I just feel, this is not me going out of my way to have a consultation for writing a story. It's about having different ideas and backgrounds and people coming in to enhance the story that I want to tell. So that's my philosophy behind it. There's a whole lot of yapping, and I'm sure I'll be more articulate in future videos. But that's not what this is, right? That's not what this podcast is about. I think I also just want to talk real quick about like are my players even able to change the trajectory of the story? And yes, I can. In multiple ways. I don't take it arc by arc. I mean, there's not much that they can do within the arc because there's a power scale to it, right? How are these mortals going to affect this deity or whatever in such a way? I'm just saying in any kind of power scale, right? How are mortals going to affect deities in such a way that it ruins all the plans, right? I don't think that's not really how it is for me. And in little arcs, yeah, things can whatever. But I don't think that the power leveling, the scaling, everything is there to do it. I will move my narrative around, right? But at the end of the day, if they don't have the urgency or don't take the hints of, the problem and the conflict that is going on, there's going to be negative aspects to it. There's going to be consequences to that. And is that punishment for, having my players have agency? I don't believe so. I believe it's punishment on their end for not realizing, the conflict at hand. And that's the thing is, you pick up a choose your own adventure book. Some of them have the first page. It's like, do you enter the whatever? This is going to come out in a video later on. This is a weirdly specific reference. That's why I'm making it. There's a Dark Carnival Choose Your Own Adventure R.L. Stine Goosebumps book. All right. And, there's in like the first 7 pages, it's like, do you go into the carnival? And then you literally can turn to like page 11 and it's like, no, your choice is no. And it's literally like, why did you pick up this book? What do you think like, and it comes back to that contractual obligation that my friends are there to, have the story. And I don't think it's disrespectful as a DM to not have that. I think it's disrespectful if you don't prepare as much for them. But I feel like, if there's not that urgency, if there's not that outline, then why even get your friends together to like spend that time? Okay, that's wrong. Now that I thought about it, having your friends together to do anything is wonderful. That's what life is about. Why are you like wasting their time by just giving them filler nonsense, right? If they're looking for story, right? Good veteran players and things like that. And even to get someone sucked in, I did parody it, but I wasn't making fun of them. I parodied the Deborah Anwal thing where, she starts and just like, hey, do you want to play right now? And it's not like John Bernthal got into the game because she's like, oh, great. Well, you can be a Gloomstalker Rager, you can be a Sorcerer, Warlock, Sorlock. Like she got into it because of the story, the pressing matter, the conflict in that, right? And that's why it worked so well. And I don't think you get that as much in sandbox games. I think there is too much openness and the lack of vision, the lack of collaborative vision between the two parties, the DM and the players, is what is going to bring your game down. Because either 1, your players are going to get bored, or 2, you're going to have no idea where you're going with anything. And that's just my 2 cents. That is my philosophy on games in a very loose, poorly articulated way. So I think I appreciate that question. Yapped a lot about it. But that's probably the most, straightforward answer you're going to get for a little bit. And thank you again for your very respectable question. I think that's great. Oh, they added a PS at the end. I hate monks and stun is fine when judiciously applied. I hate monks. I hate stunning strike, but stun is fine when judiciously applied. My God. And don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. Zach, what's your take on wild magic, both when tied to sorcerer and just as a mechanic on its own? What do you see as its biggest pain points, and how would you like to see it improved? And then this guy says this very nice message. Just want to let you know, and that's really nice. Thank you so much for your question. I'm glad to be loud and nerdy for you. Okay, I've played 2 wild magic warlocks, sorcerers, and a wild magic barbarian, and I don't like it. I really don't. I think it's fun for maybe a 5-shot or something like that. But there's just a moment where your character is so not versatile compared to every other subclass that's around that you're just like, wow, okay. It's kind of like having a joke character, right? Wild magic to me is like having a joke character. It's fun for a little bit, but then you're 3 years into a campaign and everyone else is like, have really made their characters as versatile as can be. You have your, your battle master fighter, College of Swords bard. You have your Tempest sorcerer, and all this, and then it's like, okay, well, I get to do a wild magic roll, maybe, right, DM? Roll a d20. 17. Okay, that is now 15. So 15 tries in a row, and you haven't wild magicked. Oh, okay, cool. That's only spanned across 2.5 years. I think, and then people are like, well, you have to, your DM has to run it a certain way. I think if you're even roll, like if you have a 50% chance for wild magic every time, I feel like after a little bit, one, your other players are going to be annoyed, and then two, you're still gonna lack that like urgency that you typically would get with any kind of build. I think wild magic is cool for other things. The rule where it's like counterspell, which is like not really a thing gonna be in the 2024 rules. It's cool to like roll a magic wild table there and other ways, but I think the subclasses for it's like a joke character. I just can't. And it's also like if you're playing a wild magic sorcerer, you're also engaging in a contract where it's like at any point I could probably just TPK my entire friends because I want to play wild magic sorcerer, which is fine. But I think it's fine for like how anticlimactic you will get all the way to the final boss, and then, well, I rolled a 55. Oh, okay, the world explodes. But it can lead to a lot of fun mischief. I just prefer, like, I've played enough wild magic to be like, oh, I actually don't prefer this. This is actually very boring. And then, people come, well, actually, if you have a DM that makes it, no. I don't think, sorry, I Beetlejuice slapped the iron bolts on his mouth. Let me be very clear. I don't care if I'm rolling, 9 times out of 10 on a wild magic table every time I roll, I think it's boring, but it can do so much weird stuff. Okay, great. Awesome. That's, and adds so much complexity to the, oh, okay. So my game is so boring right now that I have to have a wild magic table to make things a little bit interesting. That's the best way to use a wild magic character, is that my DM is running such a boring encounter that I have to add my own layer actions to it. I'm not a fan. I think it's actually really boring. I think it's fun for maybe a game for 5 sessions, and then it just doesn't do it. Hola, Zachary Boldington. I wish you a chilled recording session and come to you with this is quite literally the most chill episode I've ever done before. And come to you with a problem outside of player or DM behavior. Basically, I'm a novice DM wannabe author and consume a heroic amount of D&D content. I've always tried to make campaigns on my own and lure my friends into it, but either due to general disinterest or scheduling conflicts, they always drop dead early. But this time I have a group of players that are excited and a neat setting concept that is almost entirely homebrewed. It will take place in an insanely dragon-infested version of the Forgotten Realms. However many dragons you're thinking, add a lot more. But after some magic jambalaya, the party will be teleported to a post-apocalyptic America. I'm not laughing. I'm running an alternate history campaign in essentially a grimdark America right now. The Holy Empire of America. It's very cool. And actually they bring shards of the Forgotten Realms with them. Isekai? What's the opposite of isekai? Is that still isekai? So you're going to disenchant them, bringing about a second apocalypse. Okay, cool. Akira, with their goal of getting back home and fight the hodgepodge they somehow made. After all that exposition, I want to ask, would this be too much narrative clutter? Should I stick with just column A or B, or is there any column viable if treated properly? I want to have the cake of magical whimsy and eat it with a side of Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Thanks for reading this, and if I hear this on the podcast, I'll jump for joy. 5 stars. From what I see in this question, that isn't exactly... I don't know if you're worried about jumping the shark or if there's just too much to for your players to worry about. I think it comes to a point when, if you have too many factions and too many characters and too many side plots kind of coming in, there's going to be diminishing returns on stuff like that. And even the most, the best note taker in the world is at some point just going to be like, oh, well, no, they're here. I think it is, in any story, I think it's a detriment if things get too complex. And it's hard because you're writing an epic, really, when it comes to D&D. So I don't think you're jumping the shark. I think if you're trying to surprise your players, that's very neat, right? If you were to go in there and there's already, 17 different factions, 400 notable people. There's too much of that, right? And I don't think a player, there's that awful question you get as a DM where they're like, oh, I thought X was Y. And then to you, you're like, oh no, they're actually Z, right? And that's when it occurs to you that you're like, oh, I've made my story too complicated. And that's what's bad, right? If you're making mystery, I always have the thing where, you know, there should always be mystery in your world so that your players have also not only the conflict to you know, follow, but also like following what the mystery is. And the problem with having too much of that and adding too much mystery is that in your head as the DM, especially when you're writing stuff out, you know everything that's going to happen. You know not everything that's going to happen, but you know everything that's like already established in the world, the future events that would happen if they're not there, the previous events of what happened in the history and whatever. But your players don't, right? And so it's not asking, I'm not saying you're asking too much of them. I'm saying it's a little bit to your detriment as a DM for them to be following so many plot threads. Now, if they come, you know, all together and whatever, but there is going to be a point where, you know, you start to lose the side characters, right? The people who are just kind of like there, not taking notes, they're there to listen in every time, and then they have to remember some stuff and whatever. They'll go first, right? And they won't say anything yet. They'll just be like, no, I'm kind of just here to like play the story, whatever. And that's like fine. I think that happens in really any story, unless you're playing Lost Mines of Fendelver or Dragon of Icespire Peak. But then you get into like your attentive players and your, you know, note takers and things like that. And then they have no idea what's going on, or they just like there's so much that they feel fatigued. You know what I mean? And then that's where the big problem is, because these people are trying to pay attention. So if you're wondering, you know, is this too much for them to handle? Try to take a perspective from them, right? Now, if it's a mystery, it's a different thing. At some point, they're just going to be like, it's a mystery, we'll figure it out later. And that's true. But if it's just like a game where you have, you know, 17 different types of Harpers and some are fake and whatever, you know, that's too much. It's too much. And it's to any story's detriment, like I said. Now, if you think that you've jumped the shark with this, and I remember playing, not really, some slight spoilers for Portal 2. All right? There was a part in it where, you know, there's a twist and someone becomes a villain, and you end up going to like this place that is very far away from anywhere you were in the first game. And I like stopped. I remember that happened, and I was like, oh, that's a little silly. It felt like to me they jumped the shark, and then I kept playing and it formulated in somewhere. I was like, oh no, that was brilliant. And I think that's what you have to take the point to. It might be jarring when you go into a new world and some of your players are going to be like, this is weird. We were just playing a Faerun, you know, game with dragons and you know, established rules, and now all of a sudden we're in a post-apocalyptic America out of nowhere. So it might be jarring at first, but if you can formulate it where it all comes in, you know, you can save jumping that shark. You can save whatever it is that your players are a little bit opposed to. So that's my 2 cents. Maybe theoretically, you know, don't add too much to try to add complexity to the game, because complexity does not equal good storytelling, right? Sometimes, you know, creativity explodes in confinement. You know what I mean? Hey, Forever DM writing in. I recently got the chance to be a player in Pathfinder again. Okay, this is a long question. I'm sorry to the writer who is writing this in. I'm going to probably not skip over stuff, but abbreviate it. Hey, Forever DM writing in. I recently got the chance to be a player in a Pathfinder 2nd edition game that a relatively new DM was DMing. And at first I was stoked, but as time has gone on, I've noticed some strange patterns regarding the DM's treatment of the rules to my character and the rewards I got specifically for my character. This all started when I was having a private conversation with her away from the group, where she stated she didn't want me to make them magic items. My character is pretty much fully investing in crafting, so I asked her why, to which she replied by saying I would break the game if I made them best in-slot items. I obviously refuted by saying that the game is balanced to have the items in the game. We butted heads for a while, but eventually she gave me the ultimatum that I could still make magic items for the party, but only if they asked for them, and it wasn't allowed to give any suggestions, claiming I would be playing the game for them if I did. I begrudgingly agreed because it seemed like I was the only compromise, because it seemed like it was the only compromise she was willing to accept. Then, Zooey mama, dude. Okay, we were all awarded custom magic items, all of which were pretty broken except mine. They go on to say, that it's not good. Everyone else got something better with insane effects. Then in multiple encounters, there's always some roadblock I have to overcome. Like I'm constantly being CC'd or my spells are being counteracted. Meanwhile, the full other spellcasters are fine. My actions get interrupted by a reaction that they didn't have 3 turns ago. So she seems to be making stuff up as she goes. She always says she forgot to do it earlier. That does happen. I'll admit that. But you are a DM, you know that. This all came to a head when a monster had an ability that not only stopped my spell from hitting, but reflected all the damage back to me, and I had to just crit it too. I then proceeded to use recall knowledge to figure out what it was, and when I asked, she froze for a minute before answering me, saying it was a passive buff the enemy had that can only be used once a day. Then I asked the name of the ability, and she froze again. She gave me an answer that sounded fake, but I wasn't about to demand she give me the stat block or anything. There are a bunch of little things to denying me choices, removing my agency, making me do arbitrary dice rolls for mundane tasks that no one else seems to have to do. I tried talking to them, but they got really defensive and just say I'm overreacted. What do you suggest I do? There's a couple of different things to way to look at this. When you're a forever DM, there has, no matter what, been a time where you are looking to, if you've ever played or if you were a player or whatever, and you might want to power game just a little because you've been, you're so enveloped into this world, whether it be Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, that you're going to want to play, a really overpowered character at some point. But you have to realize that if you do make a character that is crazy overpowered and it's leagues beyond any of your other teammates, right? Then you have just created not only a balancing problem for the rest of your party, but also for your DM. You can't expect to get the same rewards that your other players would get because you yourself are already so much farther beyond them, right? And what is this DM supposed to do, right? I'm not saying this aside. When you have a super overpowered character, what is this DM supposed to do when you just leave you alone to conquer everything and to be, everyone looks up to you as the captain and whatever, there has to be some kind of implementation for you to balance out, right? And make it so that the one thing that you do, is really good at, certain situations and still have you to have the moment, but that you're not dominating the whole game and taking away, now I don't know. I don't have enough. I don't know you. I don't have enough context or whatever. But if your other players are mad at you and so is your DM, maybe take 2 seconds to be like, maybe I did power game a little bit and I'm, making up for the time that I was a DM all the time, right? Now, clearly you're crafting items to help other people, but you have not given me, you didn't give me a class or anything like that. And I have the players, I could have done the research and looked it up real quick. And I don't know how that affects and everything. But clearly if you're complaining and all of your other players and your DM is like, hey, maybe, maybe this is you. And, there's a small, and when I say small, it is microscopic chance that everybody does not know this game as well as you, and they are just being bad players and DMs. And it's so small, and it's probably not happening to you. You have to realize you have created this imbalance between all characters. So they have to either decide to, one, nerf you by putting certain restrictions on your character for combat and things like that, or they buff up everyone else. Well, the discrepancy between me and my 4 other players is just, it's not there when they are finally given the same power level that I have, right? Okay, so what do you want? You just want to be, you also want another thing so that they don't catch up to you and you're the captain of this team or whatever? You know what I mean? I don't think that's fair for you to make this super overpowered character when people are kind of just, making their non-min-maxed, works fine in a group setting character, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm not getting special treatment. And this goes back all the way to episode 1, where it's, well, when I asked them the effect, they can't articulate it. It's clearly not there. They're making it up. Okay. And is that so bad that they're making something up because you throw out something out of the way? Well, it's taking away my player agency. Well, guess what? You're ruining the game, dude. You're ruining the game for everyone else at the table. Well, all my friends and my DMs hate me whenever I play and whatever. But it's clearly they're taking away my agency as a player to be a power fantasy loser. Not really. Thank you for writing in. No one writes me in questions. I'm trying to read through these lines, and I'm also trying to be there on your side because you are the one who wrote in. But it sounds like to me that you have min-maxed this character to the point where it is a balancing problem, right? I don't think you should complain about getting a non-overpowered item. And if your DM wants to make up something where it's reflected back at you because of some narrative thing, because you interrupted something for the sake of whatever that ruined everyone else's, prerogative and initiative. Next comments. Actually, Zach, you used prerogative wrong, which the word you're looking for is pierogi. Listen, I can't. So what if I make up stuff as I go for my character? All right. So what if I try to adapt the combat to make it so that it's more involved for you and your other friends, right? Oh, I'm such a bad person now because I'm trying to make combat more engaging for you. Well, they Deus Ex Machina something. Okay, cool. Well, then you can go ahead and cast a 9th level whatever at level 2 because you have figured out some loophole to make such a thing happen, right? Go ahead. Here, actually, you know what? Takes off DM screen, puts it in front of you, gives you the book. Go ahead. No, go ahead. This is clearly what. Well, when I DM, I don't care what you do when you DM. That is the DM equivalent of being like, it's what my character would do. Well, when I DM, I don't care what you do when you're DM. You're at my table. If you don't want to be at my table, leave my table, dude. My gosh. What should you do in this situation? Let's put everything I said aside. That you are not the problem. Everyone else around you is wrong, and so is your DM, and that you min-maxed forever DM that knows everything right. Let's take a second and look at what you're like, what can happen for you and what you can do. That other than take accountability and realize that maybe you're the problem, maybe. Okay. If your character is clearly well off without getting these OP magic items or whatever, right? Then I would say that's fine. At least you got a magic item. And if you're clearly already, tensions are high from you saying too much stuff about this or that or whatever, and that's too much, I will agree with you at the beginning. If it's in the book, right, I do not ban much stuff from my games. I don't ban many spells. I allow silvery barbs. I allow counterspell. I allow all that. I allow it. I do have the notion, although Strixhaven's has kind of messed us up, that people did, there are relatively capable people making the rules for these games. I don't believe your DM should have been like, you're too overpowered, you can't do that. I will allow whatever at my table, but you have to realize I will go out of my way to make it so I can balance my encounters against you. You aren't coming into this game with, I'm the most powerful. You're not. You're level 4. You're fighting CR 30 things. Like there's things way, way above you. But your DM should not have said, oh, well, actually, we're going to take this away from your character. Unless, this is my one unless, and this is my opinion. This is my take for spells that should be banned. If you are running a murder mystery in a small, compact, whatever, there are ways to get around Speak with the Dead. But as a player, I would understand if you banned it. Because maybe you're trying to figure out who killed this person, right? And that's taken away when you can talk to them. And yes, there's ways. Like I did have, a murder mystery, so I took off the person didn't have a jaw, right? But there's like legend lore and stuff. There are ways to get around this, right? But I understand that more than anything when that gets in the way of actual plot. Why are there spells that make it so that the plot I'm making up and are going against me making a good story? I don't care if you can force cage someone for an hour and ruin my boss fight. Okay? One, that is also to your detriment a little bit because it's not going to be as fascinating, right? But also, why are we making more and more spells that ruin plot? That's not how we integrate like role play and combat together and like spells and whatever. That's not how we do it, right? Because then it's not plot please. No, that's not how I want. So I'd understand if you were making a build, some kind of lore. I don't know Pathfinder. But if you're making some kind of lore-based, give me plot, please, wizard or whatever, I'd understand if your DM was a little upset and was like, hey, can we actually talk about this? But from what you said, it seems like there's some kind of crafter, artificer, mechanist, whatever it is in Pathfinder build. And I don't agree with your DM if they're trying to nerf you. However, you know, if you're wondering about all of these weird Deus Ex Machina coming out of nowhere spells and abilities, I can understand that's a little frustrating, right? Because then it's like, okay, how am I supposed to plan around combat and rules and things like that if they're being made up as they go? I can understand adding, you know, HP, like 100 HP if you realized your boss fight was getting messed up, or throwing on a legendary resistance or whatever. But I don't believe that you should just make up HP. Sometimes it feels good to just one-shot a boss, you know? I mean, not every time. It sometimes feels good. That's why I like running books. So I don't run books, but playing with, like, you know, someone who's running a book, because it's in the book. The book is the book. You can't really yell about it because it's in the book, and it goes great for the DM. It's great for the player, right? But if you're making something up, just be like, you know, you've already said something about it, right? And this is, I feel the future, like, I feel like someone like myself from the future came and was like right here, and they were like, this person is wrong. And I'm like, I know, dude, I know, but I'm trying to be a little bit balanced here. I'm trying, okay? I think, right, that you should just maybe be like, you have clearly already made so much tension, so it's hard for me to be like out of character, player to player, you know, reasonable adults. You've clearly already like said so much stuff that everyone's like, dude, please come on. I'm trying so hard to like see it from their perspective and like what I would even say. Okay, well, maybe, I don't know, man. I'm trying so hard to okay. I feel, I don't want to get, I'm not giving this advice. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. I just don't believe it. From everything that I've seen here, you know, it just seems like they're trying to balance out your overpowered character, right? You've said something to them, which is always my biggest advice, is like person to person, like figure out whatever. And that is clearly not working in this situation. So what I would say is ride it out a little bit. And if they continue to do such a thing, right, maybe let tensions dissolve a little bit and then say something. Or if you are very overpowered, realize that sometimes DMs have to take steps. You are a DM, you should know this, to make it so that things are balanced, not only for the encounter, but for the other players, so they don't feel insignificant in this collaborative game. That's what I would say. Great. I don't think that's the answer you were looking for. That's it. It did go on a little bit. I'm glad. But, guys, yeah, we'll be back to normal after this one. And there are no super thanks this time around. But I'm sure, here, I'll make one up real quick. Oh, some avid fan, 1997, sent in $2. Says D&D Germa. There we go. Guys, I love you. Thank you so much for the support. As always, thank you for tuning in. Have a great week. I'll be back, the week after this one airs. Have a great one. Please send boldtakes@outlook.com. Send me your information. Not your information. Don't send me your personal information. Guys, send me... No, I don't even know if I can say that loud. Guys, but go ahead. I'm thinking about getting a P.O. box. If you think that'd be fun, let me know. But I think I'm going to get a P.O. box. They're much more affordable than I thought. And guys, guess what? I'll let you in a little secret. I'm getting a camera. Now, I don't know if I will record this with that camera, because this is kind of like, why did... It's Always Sunny or any sitcom have to go, 4:3 to 16:9. You know what I mean? What am I talking about? Have a great week. I love you all. Bye.